We're bottling beer! Hi, I'm Brian.
I'm Derica, and you're watching City Steading Brews.
Today we are bottling my porter beer. Now, it's not a full-on tasting and everything video. We're just basically getting it from the fermenter into these lovely bottles with our fancy schmancy labels that we still haven't taken off.
And prepped so that they can carbonate.
All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to rack this out of this fermentation vessel into this vessel so that we can add our priming sugar. More on that in a second. It looks like a porter. We want to put that about halfway down, get the pumping started, because that way you don't agitate the silt on the bottom. And I probably should make sure that this doesn't spit out at. It smells really good. The hops, I definitely smell hops in this. Almost fruity. Shouldn't be fruity, should be chocolatey and roasty. A couple of things about racking. With beer, you generally will rack once, okay? You'll rack it when fermentation's complete, which in this case, it's been almost 3 weeks, so we know it's complete. It was done probably after 4 or 5 days, but we haven't had time to get to it. So you rack this once, then you prime it, then you bottle it. I'll get to the priming in just a moment, but I just wanted to make that distinction. With meads and wines, sometimes you might rack more than once, but you still don't do your first rack, no matter what it is, until fermentation is complete. A lot of people have been saying, oh, I racked after 4 days. There's no reason. There's just absolutely no reason. And if they think because they put fruit in that it's going to mold, it's not. There's so much CO2 building up in there, it's not going to mold. You'd really have to mess up badly for your fruit to mold in primary. Now in secondary, it totally can, so be careful there. But that's another show. So the next thing that I want to do is take a reading on this, just kind of to get an idea of where it is. It started out at 1.042, which is not the highest gravity in the world, but that's why it's a porter and not a stout. Because originally stouts were called stout porters. They were literally just a porter with a little bit more alcohol. Now remember, we did add lactose to this, so that's an unfermentable sugar, and that's why this did what it did. It actually stopped at 10.24. That comes out to about 3.4%. Actually, no, I'm sorry, 2.4%. And then I usually add about 0.5% roughly for carbonation because it's going to chew up some of that. So we're at like 3%, which means you can drink a lot of this beer. That's kind of a good thing. Anyway, so I'm going to take this back out. Let's put that into the stuff. And I'm going to pour this back in carefully down the side just to not oxidize too much. Did I spittle?
Very close.
I didn't though. That's the important fact. Okay, the next step, really simple, is we're going to add priming sugar. Now, my general rule for beer with priming sugar is 1 ounce or 28 grams by weight of white plain old sugar per gallon of beer. So we have 1.5 gallons here, 42 grams. I just really like that number. I'm just going to put it in there, get out a spoon that's been sanitized.
In the red bucket of sanitization!
That. And I'm just going to stir this up. Now the idea here is we racked it off the sediment and the tube and things like that so that there's no gunk in our beer. And now I can mix it properly. You want to be a little careful because you don't really want to add oxygen to this at this point, but I think there's enough gas coming out, I can see it, that I don't really have to worry about it. But I do want to make sure I dissolve that sugar. Now, there's a couple ways to do the priming, and the reason we do the priming at all is this beer is done, okay? It was finished fermenting, done. Nothing would happen. If I put it in bottles, it would not get bubbly. It would not carbonate. By adding more sugar, I'm giving the yeast something to work on because this is far from yeast tolerance. So the yeast have something to do. Just that little bit that we gave it is enough to give it bubbles and just pressurize it, basically. Now, some people will say, oh, I put a teaspoon of sugar in every bottle. Here's my problem with that. Measure out 10 teaspoons, and I mean literally, measure them, weigh them. You'll see a variance in them And that's not a good thing. You definitely do not want variance, because that means some bottles might be overcarbonated, some might not be enough carbonated. By putting it all into this as one batch, I'm guaranteeing the most consistency across all the bottles. Because as you see here, we have some larger bottles, some smaller bottles, and some teeny weeny bottles. I don't want to have to try to figure out what goes in what. Instead, I like to just have a homogeneous mix that goes in them all. Okay, so now our beer is mixed and primed. If I was to not bottle this right now, it would actually just raise the alcohol level. Artificially though, because it wouldn't be sugars and starches from the mash, it would actually just be from sugar. So it wouldn't add to flavor, just add alcohol. So next is we got to get it from there into these guys. And to do that, we put it on that box of elevation. We get out our auto siphon, and now this time we can go all the way to the bottom because there's no tube in the bottom to worry about. And we have a bottling wand. Now this has a little thing on the end. I finally got the one with a spring. And what you do is when this goes into the bottle, it can sit like that and nothing will happen. If I push down, now the liquid will actually flow. And you want to make sure you start it with it pushed down. So
are you ready?
I am ready. So it's best to do this as a two-person job because it's hard to hold everything all at once. It's flowing. It's good. Now the trick to doing this, you probably won't be able to see, but I'll move my finger with the level of the liquid. You can see it's rising up. When I get to about here is when I pull it out because that wand takes up a little bit of space. You see Derek has got another bottle ready for me because this happens quick and I don't like to spill it all over the place. Just go like this and boom. That way you fill to just the right spot. Now, like I said, I can just pause this. See, she's holding it down on purpose. But that way it's filled to about there, right in the top of the neck, just like we like it. We're going to finish filling the rest of these. Be back in a minute. Okay, so we've bottled all of this, and we got 4 wine-sized bottles, 750s. We got 2 16-ouncers, and we got 2 12-ouncers for 1.5 gallons. Not too bad. It's pretty close to 1.5 gallons there. But what's going to happen to these now is they're going to go into what I call the bomb shelter, which is really just a thick plastic tub that we got from Lowe's with a lid. And we put all these in there. These are just a little bit too big for it, so I put them in a honeycombed wine box. That way, in case we get a bottle bomb, we shouldn't, but in case we get a bottle bomb, it's contained, it won't kill us, it won't hurt the cats, it won't make a mess all over the house. But what's going to happen now? Okay, like I started to say before, they're going to ferment just that little bit more, maybe a week is all they need. Usually in about 5 days these are done. And that produces carbonation. When you bottle beer or anything that you're naturally carbonating, make sure you're using something that has held carbonation before or is intended for carbonation. These are, you know, our fancy lemonade bottles from Aldi. These are Fleinsberger beer bottles. These we bought from the Beer and Winemaker's Pantry specifically for holding beer. So we know all these bottles are safe. Most of them have actually held beer before, like just a few days ago. So we know they should be fine, barring cracks, scratches, whatever. Just be careful. We hear a lot about people having bottle bombs and problems. I think just a little bit of preparation, using the right equipment, and doing it safely goes a long way towards not having a problem. Anyway, that's all we got for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Had a bottle of porter. How about another one? We're bottling beer. I think we're good.